Talking law with Despina Priala, and we've just been talking about individual responsibility and how you personally can take account for things. And Despina, I came across this case that's resurfaced from back in 2016. There were three sisters in a car. You may have seen it in the news, but it was a case where one of the sisters died when the car crashed because the driver was actually 4 times over the legal limit. And they'd all been at a club, so a Gold Coast venue, out in public before they all got in the car, and then unfortunately the smash happened. Now the mother is suing the daughter who was driving at the time because she wasn't the one that lost her life. So it's really sad. I mean, it's tearing the family apart, but there's compensation needed because of the traumatic circumstances. I guess they're still feeling mental effects years after.
Yes, I read the article that you're talking about, and there was some issues perhaps of post-traumatic stress and psychological issues and, perhaps compensation there. But it's a very unfortunate set of circumstances, and in the legal world, we've seen a few of these similar instances over the years where people have obviously become intoxicated and have either left a venue where they've been served alcohol and something's happened to them, or they've got behind the wheel themselves and then, of course, an accident. And it's interesting how it's played out in the courts over the years. And what we're really talking about perhaps here in this instance is contributory negligence. So when you have more than one party involved, generally you do. You go to a venue, you get served alcohol, so there's the licensee and their duty of care, and then you as the patron who is receiving the alcohol. So obviously there's more than one party involved. So when we talk about contributory negligence, if there's an accident afterwards or someone is killed or injured, then who is responsible ultimately under common law? And that's what we're really talking about here.
Well, one of the sisters has already successfully made a claim, and they settled that last year. So she got in the car. The other sisters all agreed, perhaps. I don't know the whole circumstances.
And you probably never will.
This is the thing.
Because if it was settled, then you won't know all the circumstances, and it won't end up in court because you won't then truly know what all the facts were. But I can talk about how this contributory negligence has played out in the courts over the years, and then whether or not you could look at this circumstance and see perhaps whether it might have applied or not. In the end, we won't really know because it's been settled, part of it. But over the years, we've seen some interesting cases, 3 in particular, that I can recollect. So the first one, and this is in Queensland and perhaps over the border, as you'll see in a minute. So there was a case in 1997 that perhaps people might remember called the Chevron Hotel case. And that was quite significant. And that was a High Court case. And someone was being served alcohol there in the Chevron Hotel, as it was then known, in 1997, left the establishment, walked out, and was hit by a bus. So obviously they were intoxicated, didn't know, perhaps they may have been jaywalking, I suspect. I think that's what happened in the case. And then that person was hit by a bus. In that particular case, the court found that the licensee was responsible. The licensees have a duty of care, and we've seen the Liquor Licence Acts and over the years been established, and responsible service of alcohol laws that have come out. In that particular case, the licensee was held responsible and had a duty of care and didn't discharge that duty of care sufficiently. In that particular case, people were around a bar, that person was served alcohol, and then they were allowed to leave, and that person was clearly intoxicated. So that was that case.
So when you get an RSA, you do get taught now that you've got to look out for all the signs if someone is intoxicated, and you don't keep refueling them.
That's right, as best you can.
Right.
So it depends on the circumstances. So we go to the next case, for example, and it actually touches upon some people here in the local area because it was a case involving the South Tweedheads Rugby League Football Club.
This made history.
Yes, 2004, actually. So in that case, interestingly, the courts changed their minds. It was another High Court case, and they actually said that the patron was responsible. So it was a very unfortunate set of circumstances again, but a little bit different to the first in that, and this is how the courts always review, depends on the circumstances and the outcome. But there, what happened, a very quick summary, of course, there's a lot of details, and I'm just summarising very quickly. But in that particular case, there was a champagne breakfast put on. There was people, over 100 people in the group. So this person kept consuming alcohol through the day, eventually left at 5:30, and within an hour she was killed. She drove a car and then drove it into a tree, I think it was, and killed herself. So then there was a lawsuit and who was responsible. So, but then we have to go back, and if you read the case, which I have, and there's quite a lot of details that we can't go into it all today, but in that particular case, what the court said significantly is that, look, we've got a group over 100 people, and we had other people in the club at the time. It was very difficult for the licensee and the staff members to truly take stock of how much alcohol that one person consumed in a day.
That's right, and you can imagine that. I mean, okay, there's 100 people at least, and undoubtedly more than that, and you're busy, doing what it is that you do. I mean, to try and serving, waiting, etc. So to try and keep up to date with everyone that's there and where you believe their level of intoxication is, it would be very difficult.
They might have a bottle at the table and just helping themselves.
That's right.
Yes. Well, that's right. So who consumed out of the group? How much, who consumed and when and how?
There's no measurement.
That's right. But the case was not funny, but the case was interesting in that at the end they were talking about, well, the staff did see her take a whole champagne bottle and start drinking it from the bottle. So then they thought, they knew that, okay, hang on a second, this person and her behaviour was changing and she was getting more aggressive. So then they stopped serving her alcohol, and then they tried to discharge their duty of care, which licensees always have, by saying, we're going to ring you a cab, we're going to try and get you home in that way. She refused. So there's only so much a licensee can do.
Yeah.
Yes, so it was shown in the case that they did discharge their duty because they took reasonable steps to try and help that person once they realised she was intoxicated.
And that's all you can expect, really.
Yes, because if you're pouring your own drink, how would you know a standard drink in the first place?
Yeah.
And if you get way out of hand like that, if they've offered...
That's true. And then there's always
the
question of how many drinks have you had in the last hour and how many have you had since...
You may forget.
That's to keep count over a period of time.
You couldn't.
It's just impossible.
No, you couldn't. Not in that case. But compare it to perhaps a small group of people in a bar, right, where you have one barman serving, say, 6 people, for example. Now, that would be quite different because that person could clearly see how many drinks each person was consuming at any given time. And I think that would pose a different outcome to a group of over 100 at a large club like this.
I've got a question. What if I was at the table? Is it my duty of care as a friend to remove her keys to make sure she doesn't drive home?
Well, that's an interesting point. One, in terms of the serving of alcohol, you're not serving her alcohol. So that duty of care wouldn't be on you. Okay. But in terms of removing keys, again, there's only so much you can do. And you can't... if you start restraining people and if you start taking their possessions away and they become quite aggressive, and then there's going to be consequences as a result, and perhaps other people in the establishment may suffer, you see, then you may be at fault in some way because you may have caused indirectly negligence to other people because you've tried to restrain her, she might have lashed out and then injured other people. So there's all sorts of other things that can happen. I think as a friend, of course, you would do the best you can. Depends on the person's character as well. But then from that particular case, we then moved to another case, a significant case in 2009. And this was a case in Tasmania. So it was decided in the full court of the Supreme Court in Tasmania, where initially they found against the licensee, they found that the licensee didn't discharge their duty of care, but then it went on appeal and then it was overturned. So again, in favour of the licensee, not against, and the patron was found to be responsible.
So they voluntarily went and had a bit of a good time.
It was a motor inn, so it wasn't like a football club where there was a lot of people. And in this, it was a very unusual situation in this particular case because you had a husband who said, look, I have a motorcycle out the back, you're going to keep the keys. So he actually gave the keys to his motorcycle to the licensee. And said, you're going to keep them for me and in case, I drink too much, but I want you to call my wife in case I do so she can come pick me up. Now, that all played out in the case. And it was quite interesting because when he did have a little bit too much and the licensee tried to call the wife and then attempted and did discharge their duty of care in the end, as the court found out, they did the best they could. They tried to call the wife and he was becoming very aggressive and said, if I want to call my wife myself, I will. Give me the keys now. And so... again, there's only so much a licensee can do. It's about taking reasonable steps to discharge that duty of care that all licensees have. So yes, the pendulum swung over the years with the courts. And, you know, there is this licensee responsibility versus individual patrons' responsibility. And each situation will be tested on its individual circumstances, like the case you mentioned here.
And they're all partially negligent in this case.
Well, perhaps we don't know the full facts, but the driver was obviously intoxicated. Was the sister aware? If she was aware of it, was she also intoxicated, so she couldn't make a decision of sound mind? Yes, so you don't know the full facts, but in any event, we'll see how that plays out in the end with the insurance company. But yes, definitely we've got licensees and individuals' responsibilities playing out in different circumstances.
Yep, and that's something that you've covered many times on this program, is the whole individual responsibility, and it most definitely is an issue, and it seems that the courts are taking that into consideration.
A sensible approach and sensible outcomes, yes, it's good to see.
Next week we've got something very exciting, Commonwealth Integrity Commission.
How did you know about that?
Oh, because hot off the press, I can see it on your desk.
Yes, it was just announced this week. So we want to talk about all of that and what it is next week. Yes.
And to find you, we can come and see you at 49 Cockleshell Court in Runaway Bay.
Yes, you can.
Google Priala, Priala.
Legal, yes, that's right. And can call our office, 55 291 294, and happy to chat.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
See you then.
Hang on, you had a cab ride.
Oh, I did. Very quickly, I say hi to 13 cabs on the Gold Coast. So I'm not being paid to say this, but we had a very lovely cab ride. Say it very quickly, and whilst I was in the cabbie, in the cab, the driver was actually listening to the program. So listening to the John Laws program and listening to the station, and happened to ask if he likes our program. He said yes. So I thought, oh, wonderful. I'll give a big, hi, hello out there to 13 cabs. Well done.
Hey to you, shout out, and he'll be able to tune in next week,
Exactly.
8:30 when you're back on Thursday.
Exactly.